You've probably come across a scene like this, where the road was clear, but someone still got stuck on the side of the road. Everyone knows that a car needs fuel. Keeping it filled up is the wise action of those who want to reach their destination. And this characteristic is what has been lacking in many, especially when it comes to zeal for what is most important, salvation. How many people started well in the faith and persevered for some time, but eventually stopped along the way? They didn't have the fuel of faith, which is the Holy Spirit. And little by little, without realizing it, their flame died down. And there are still many who live in the red. They are not alert at all.
You're watching Gaia, the Caribbean.
Mikee K, the Observer. Mikee K, Mikee K, Mikee K, Mikee K, the Observer.
Hey, and pleasant good evening once again, and welcome to another episode of The Observer with yours truly, Mikee K, right here on Gaia TV, of course, Tigo, Facebook, YouTube. When you get the link, please share, Amplia, and wherever you catch it. This evening, we'll be speaking to Oropouche West MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Finance, Dave Tanku. Also, veteran journalist Ken Ali, and lecturer and head of UWI's Institute for Gender and Development Studies, Dr. Suan Barrett. And of course, just to remind you that our bodies are under stress from environmental toxins, to work stress, to poor food choices, and low nutrients in the food we eat. Our bodies are under a lot of stress, and all of these can lead to high inflammation levels. Excessive inflammation can lead to a large number of health problems that cause pain and damage to the body. So please, pick up your bottle of Omega XL. There's 3 fatty acids. It helps reduce the body as far as inflammation. And Omega XL provides the health benefits of many fatty acids. So please pick up your bottle today. We'll be right back after these messages.
Limiting chronic inflammation is important for so many conditions that occur.
I had a lot of pain 4 years ago.
I used to have pain in my knees and my hip.
Taking it for arthritis.
Omega XL saved my life.
Then I started to realize, but hey, I could use my hands, I don't have any pain.
All in all, I am pleased to say that the Omega XL has worked.
Family Medicine provides a unique pharmacy experience for your entire family. We carry your favorite brands of vitamins, supplements, personal care needs, and much more, as well as professional prescription services. Our staff is well trained and knowledgeable to answer all your health questions. We're located at number 78 Cragnage Village, Princestown. Open Monday to Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sundays and public holidays. And number 4 Mayaro Junction, Mayaro. Open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sundays and public holidays. For our Princestown location, call 655-0030. For online orders via WhatsApp, 380-6003. For Mayaro branch, call 630-4312. And orders via WhatsApp, 326-6616. Mayaro Family Medicine. Cure, compassion, care.
When you say TNT's construction boss, then there's only one company, Lacroix Construction Services Limited, specializing in general construction, industrial maintenance, manpower resources, transportation and lifting, and equipment rental, excavators, bulldozers, dump trucks, lighting systems, and everything for your project. We have affordable prices. Call now 267-0000 or 431-0012. Lacroix Construction Services Limited, TNT's construction boss. Looking for top quality and affordable hardware supplies? Then look no further than Midland Hardware, number 97 Eastern Main Road, Arouca. We stock a wide range of tools, water tanks, blocks, lumber, steel, and everything you need for your home and business project. Check out our new display of steel windows and assorted designs of metal curtain rods. Midland also stockpiles sand, gravel, topsoil, and more. We have a variety of kitchen faucets, face basins, and toilet sets, bathroom mat sets, all garden tools, hand tools, generators, power washers, and water pumps. Customers can make payments via links, credit card, online payment, and cash on delivery. WhatsApp 327-7761 for free quotation, or give us a call at 646-2144. Open every day, Sunday to Sunday from 8 a.m. From foundation to finish, it's all at Midland.
Oh gosh, this place hot and the AC in this car not working. It's like a driving a damn sauna.
Check Ryan Air. Ryan Air is ranked among the best in TNT for auto air conditioning service. They specialize in repairing and servicing all makes and models of vehicles and heavy equipment. They also stock a wide range of parts. Give them a call at 640-5828 or visit them at number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua, or email ryanairac@gmail.com. For prompt and efficient service, look no further than Ryan Air.
Limiting chronic inflammation is important for so many conditions that occur.
I had a lot of pain 4 years ago.
I used to have pain in my knees and my hip.
Taking it for arthritis.
Mikee K saved my life.
Then I started to realize, but hey, I could use my hands, I don't have any pain.
All in all, I am pleased to say that the Omega XL has worked.
Hey, thank you, Master Control. And don't forget, pick up your bottle of Omega XL and also do your grocery shopping at ADC Supermarket. And don't forget Midland Hardware. And, of course, get that air condition fixed in your vehicle. Check out Ryan Air and all the good folks that is part of our program. Joining us is a man who's no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Oropouche West MP and UNC Shadow Minister of Finance, Dave Tanku. Special good evening and a Happy New Year to you, Mr. Tanku, and your entire family.
Thank you very much, Mikey. Good night to everyone. I wish you all a very happy and safe 2024 as we move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. The Prime Minister says he sees hopeful signs for 2024. And he says that we can anticipate that the new year will be one full of risk, even as it holds considerable promise. We can anticipate that the increases in the minimum wage and other government policies will further ease the cost of living burden on the most vulnerable. What say you?
Well, Mikey and your listeners, I would not get into the quandary of saying that the Prime Minister is misleading the population. What I would say, though, is that he's cherry-picking his facts. He's selectively selecting, using data to create his Nancy story. That Nancy story that they have been promoting for the last 8 years, that the country is doing well, the economy is growing, when the facts show otherwise. It's ironic that the Prime Minister is saying to welcome 2024 with greatness. He sees so much promise, etc. And on the same breath, he's saying that there are risks. If after 8 years and $420 billion in expenditure, this country has gotten progressively worse, I don't see what in 2024, what miracle in 2024, except a general election where he loses. I don't see what miracle could take place in 2024 or in 2025, which will change the direction that this government, this PNM government, and I almost said Patrick Manning, God bless his soul, but Dr. Keith Rowley and his bunch of minions, I don't see anything that they could do in the next 2 years that will change the direction that they put this country in, downwards for the average citizen.
I've always asked, as far as looking at the economy, people could use statistics and that can be easily manipulated. But the reality of it is that, living on a daily basis, and you will hear the conversation and the narratives, people ask, well, how much more sacrifice are we supposed to make? How much more tightening of our belt that we need to do? Where's the payoff? What's going to happen? And it doesn't seem to have, whether it be a long-term or mid-term plan, as how are we going to get out of here? How do we get out of this situation? The Prime Minister said it has been, last year was the first full year, active year, after the pandemic. But even prior to the pandemic, we had some serious economic challenges and problems. So when you hear this sort of, conversation about things have turned around, very optimistic, it makes you wonder if it's just a matter of pressing reset to find ourselves back in the same situation that we've been in for the last 8 years.
Mikey, part of the problem is that the government refuses to accept the facts that average citizens are confronting on a daily basis. And if they don't accept the facts that things are bad, then they will not take policies to fix it. That is why they have done nothing about crime. They have done nothing about the crisis in the health sector where people have to wait months and years for emergency surgery. They've done nothing about infrastructure. They've done nothing about job creation. They just sat back and hoped that miracles will happen. They've pegged all their hopes on gas. They pegged all their hopes on the dragon gas materializing. And there's no indication that that will materialize in the very near future in any way. So that we are in a situation where a government is delusionally pursuing policies based on the assumption that things are fine and busily trying to create the perception, create the narrative through public relations gimmicks to convince citizens it's gaslighting us, to convince citizens that things are fine. The Prime Minister, in his New Year's Day message, which you just referenced, touted that inflation fell from 10% in May to 1.9%. Mikey, let me just share a piece of information for the listening audience. When you have an inflation rate of 10% in May, it meant that food prices, and this was food prices specifically, it meant that food prices increased by 10% in May. When he says now that inflation has dropped by 1.9% in October, it means it's 1.9% more on top of the 10 point whatever percent that has gone on. So as long as there's a positive inflation rate, as long as inflation is positive, as long as the number is 1.3%, it means that prices are going to increase. So it uses that statistic to mislead the population.
I don't know if you're moving around, you're sort of breaking up a bit. You get right back to where you were.
Right. The Prime Minister is using the inflation rate to create the perception that things are getting better. Just like he threw in the increase in salaries, the increase in minimum wage, etc., that things are going to get, the burden that they're putting on the population will ease. We already know, those of us who live in this country know that when you have property tax, when you have increase in water rates and electricity rates, when you have increased food prices and prices for everything else going up, this 4% that they try to convince the population they've increased minimum wage salaries by and minimum wages by, etc. That has disappeared. You're giving people 4% interest and you're now admitting that in 1 month in May, there was a 10% inflation rate.
Yeah, but again, Mr. Dago, a lot of these things are in our face. We're about, let's say realistically, 20 or 21 months away from a general election. Then I don't think perception is going to be able to last that long, that length of time. Reality has to kick in. We saw it over the Christmas holidays. people basically bought the bare necessities, what they figure that they can use throughout the holidays. But as far as consumer confidence, it's at an all-time low. No one is letting go of a $5 or $10 because there's no guarantee that $3 or $4 is going to come back to you. No one's doing that. So government must be aware of the fact of how spending is going, consumer confidence is going, the mere fact that we simply do not have an economy that is working for the people. And I don't think there's enough time to even roll out anything, as you said. But again, time is against us as far as trying to roll this out to gain traction for an upcoming general election.
Mikey, we have heard about a roadmap to recovery. Remember that?
Yeah.
We have heard about multiplicity of plans by the government at the early stages. They've done nothing. The reason they have done nothing is because they're busy feeding off the public purse. They're busy taxing. If there's so much development that this government has been seeing for the last 8 years, if there's been so much of growth and development, why are we selling assets in our fire sale? MHTL 2 years ago was announced as a very valuable asset, which will be used to generate revenue streams for this country. Now the government is selling it off. If it's not going so well, if the economy is going so well, why are they punishing people with property tax? Why are they increasing utility rates? Why is it that the flour prices are about to go up? Why is it that all of these individual things are now being pushed onto the backs of a population which we know cannot afford it if the country is doing so well? When an economy is doing well, the country should benefit. The average citizens should see growth and development. The Prime Minister said, uses figures to mislead. He talked about a reduction in the unemployment rate. Unemployment is now ridiculously low. The facts are that employment in 2023, June 2023, based on the review of the economy, there was 587,400 people employed as of June 2023. That's the last statistic that I have available. I don't know if it probably has its own statistics made up, but I will talk about that in a few minutes. So in June 2023, 587,400 people employed. You know what it was in September 2015 when they came in? It was 620,200. So employment has not been increasing. In fact, unemployment has been increasing. The labor force has been shrinking because people are getting frustrated and have stopped looking for jobs. But you see, we're using CSO statistics. And there has not been a CSO survey for years. It's way overdue. So even those statistics you cannot have confidence in. The facts from the NIB reports that we know is that there are now less people contributing. That means that more people and more businesses have shut down, have left the system. And that's another thing. The economy is doing so well, and we are in a serious crisis with the National Insurance Board. Citizens are being put at risk. Their revenue streams for the future, their savings, their national savings are being put at risk because this government simply has done nothing to protect their interests.
And one of the highlights that the Prime Minister spoke about, that he highlighted, he says that in this year, 2024, the Ministry of Social Development will roll out a national register in which it will track the lives of the most vulnerable among us. Now, many people who are now in that category of most vulnerable were active, working citizens of this country. And I quite clearly that many people would tell you, listen, we are not trying to have a handout or a hamper economy. People want to put their shoulders to the wheel and get sustainable employment so they can feed their families and, by extension, help build Trinidad and Tobago. But it seems as though now that a register is going to be put in place, who is going to be, I mean, it doesn't add up.
Mikey, I understand the need for the register. But if after 8 years and billions of dollars spent on grants of all sorts from this government, they still have no clue about who they gave and who are those who are in need. They still have no clue, and that's what this statement is about. You know, when he says they're going to put a register in place, it's because they really have no idea of what they're doing 8 years and several $billion given away in grants, and we know that they give it away for all kinds of nefarious political reasons instead of giving it to those who are in need. But it's an admission that they have no clue about what they were doing. They have a Ministry of Social Development that is operating Vike, randomly, providing no justification and explanation for the billions being spent that should have been going to help people survive crises that this government is putting in.
Now, and one of the other things that he highlights, of course, in the Ministry of Public Utilities, the government will be utilizing the facilities of an IDB loan for improved water delivery with targets that deliver a reliable water supply to 90% of the population in the new year. Now, we were at a position under the last regime where, in fact, all these blue barrels and people trying to catch water on the side of the road, all of that was gone. I mean, you had a water supply, an adequate water supply. Now we're going to the IDB, having a loan to come out and actually try to get water to areas that once had water, but for whatever reason, that in itself has been shut down.
Mikey, that is all a bunch of mamagai. In that same statement, the Prime Minister said that they're expecting to reach 90% of the population with a regular water supply. We just came out of the worst water crisis in our history, where South and Central Trinidad and Tobago were without a water supply, pipe-borne or truck-borne, for up to 2 to 3 months at a time. That has not stopped. That has not stopped in parts of my constituency in Oriput West. Today, I receive calls that some of the communities have been without Ramjohn Trace, etc., have been without water supply in pipes or truck-borne for 21 days. So all this talk about reliable water supply for 90% of the population in the year 2024, that, for me, is wishful thinking. When we challenged the Minister of Public Utilities in the Parliament and asked him what he was going to do to make sure that people did not have to go to the point where they were desperate for water, literally living day to day without regular water to drink or to cook, much less to wash with. The minister said they were going to do several things, including drilling wells. He repeated the same thing in May that he said in March, that he also repeated in the budget debate. They have done nothing because they have no priorities. But while that is happening, there are some areas of this country that has 24/7 water supply.
Yeah.
And they're telling people in South and Central Trinidad and Tobago that you'll be on a schedule, and every 14 days you'll get a water supply. So what is supposed to happen between that? That is the ambition this government has for the population of this country. They must have you in a state of perpetual dependency, where you must beg for what is your right. You must beg somebody to give you water. If you can't get it, you have to pay for it for yourself. If we are having to pay for water supply, a private supply of water, and we have to pay for private health care, and we have to patch our roads ourselves, what the hell are we doing with this government? Why are we paying taxes? And you're coming to bring property tax now to tell people when you get property tax, you'll get all of these things? Hogwash.
And I mean, these are 9 things that are outlined here: minimum wage, unemployment, energy sector, social development, national register, initiatives in the Ministry of Health, programs for diabetes and hypertension, public servants, and the list goes on for these 9 things. But the reality here, Mr. Tanku, is that many people who have waited on this, especially economists, has made it quite clear that the middle class has been wiped out. People who had a 2-car home but now has 1 vehicle, people who had put aside to send their children for higher education, tertiary education, even outside of the country, that money is not there. So how are they making ends meet? The entire middle class has been affected. And all of these initiatives really and truly add up to nothing if we cannot get people back to work, if we cannot bring about economic security, and if we cannot deal with consumer confidence. Are we then simply just spinning top in mud?
We are absolutely just spinning top in mud. This government is on autopilot. Nobody is running the ship. I hope that they will be held to account in the next election. But I want to throw you back to the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, the United States was going through this very severe time when there was no employment was at its lowest ever.
Yeah.
And what the government of the United States did then is created jobs like infrastructure.
You're breaking up again. You want to stay one place. Go ahead.
Yeah. What the government of the United States did to get out of the Great Depression was to create jobs. That's when they started building railways, etc., 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 throughout opening up the country, developing various initiatives so that they could diversify the economy, etc. So what is critically required now, which has been required, what is critically required from 2015 come back, is the creation of jobs, real sustainable jobs. This government has not been doing that. That is why, with all the talk that they're talking now, they have not established a situation where, as the Prime Minister himself managed to admit, indubitably so, they have not established a situation where they can create an environment that will be attractive for business to invest. They have not done that. And as long as crime is as high as it is, as long as there's such a huge difficulty in getting access to foreign exchange, as long as the government fails to treat with the needs of the small and medium-sized sector, we will continue to be in crisis, because that's the group that creates the maximum amount of employment. That's the group from which we get the middle class.
Yeah.
Instead, Mikey, what we are seeing big business take over small business because they have access to all the resources, they have access to foreign exchange, etc., etc., etc. We are seeing big business eclipse small business, push them out of operation.
And you're correct. Even if you look in the energy sector, you see people who would be dealing with fried chicken franchises are now part of the energy sector, and they bought these companies for pennies on the dollar. So they took advantage of a situation. But the fact of the matter still remains, my heart really goes out to the senior citizens in this country. I mean, we're talking property tax, and you mentioned it earlier. But these are individuals on fixed incomes. They have to pay for medicine, which is a priority. They have to pay for food. Some of them may not be living in their homes. These are people who put their shoulders to the wheel in order to lead the way and blaze the trail for many of us who came after. Now today, these very same people in their twilight years are going to have to deal and have the anxiety to have to deal with these bills and these extra costs when, again, they don't have the money.
Well, I'm glad you raised the property tax, because I wanted to touch on two issues there. People in Suchet Pinal have started getting their assessments. And in some of those areas, Suchet is one of those areas that floods with 3 and 4 feet of water. It's one of those areas that floods because it's along the river bank where the government has refused to raise the river banks, etc. I'm very curious as to find out from the government how they came up with an assessment that one of those properties is able to generate $3,000 a month. If for 3 and 4 months of the year, these properties are under flood, how are these people going to now have to pay property tax? But it's not just that, there's another issue that has come up. If you have 2 identical houses, one rented out, so this is one that is owned by somebody who has now rented it out. Let's call him Imbert. So call him Imbert now. Well, let me forget the call Imbert. Imbert has a property that he owns and is rented out.
Yeah.
And Nani has a property right next to him, identical in shape, identical in number of rooms. Nani has a property that she is living in. Do you know what happens? The rental, the property that is rented out, they're using that value to determine what Nani has to pay. Now that rented out property is generating an income. So yes, I could see if you could want to tax a property that's generating an income, that's a property to tax. Yeah. But Nani's property is not generating an income. But she is going to be charged the same tax as a property that's earning an income. That's wrong. That's unethical.
I agree with you.
But what about the industrial and commercial property tax?
Yeah.
Those are places that generate income from the property. So they are penalizing people, like you said, who would have sacrificed all their lives. Home ownership is the largest single investment that people make. They would have sacrificed all their lives to save their money to build their property so they could live comfortably in. They would have spent extra to put in air conditioning for their own comfort. They would have spent extra to paint it and have it looking good. If you drive around this country today, you would see conditions to which properties have been forced to be taken to. Because you are afraid to paint your house because now they'll come and increase in value. You are afraid to maintain your property, your investment, because then the government is coming, Imbert and his crew is coming with evil eye to penalize you for investing and for saving. Where else in the world does a government penalize an economy, penalize citizens for saving? That's what they should be encouraging citizens to do.
And I agree with you fully. Our time is up. I want to thank you so much again, Mr. Tanku. I mean, looking into the new year, we don't really know what to expect. What can we predict as far as the economy? We know it's going to be a bumpy ride. We started off once again with more murders than days of the year, and we've been here before. And again, very unfortunate. But keep up the good work. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and we'll be speaking to you, of course, again throughout this entire year.
Thank you, Mikey. In closing, I just want to urge citizens to step up and speak up now. We are running out of time before this thing gets so bad that it becomes impossible to pull back from the edge.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, there, folks, there you have it. That was the UNC Shadow Minister of Finance, Dave Tanku, or Pooch West MP. And he's right. Before you know it, it's way too late to pull back. That is the reality. Again, my heart goes out to those senior citizens. Really true. Let me say a pleasant good evening and Happy New Year to veteran journalist Ken Ali. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Good evening to you, Mikey, and your many listeners and viewers.
Thank you so much for taking time out, and all the best to you and your entire family.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ali, I love your writing. You get to the core of everything, the meat of it. Please, what is taking place at the Agricultural Development Bank, the ADB? What's going on?
A lot of financial scandals there. Now, the ADB was set up in the 1960s. There was a predecessor before that. And in 2010, when Mrs. Fasad-Bissessar got into government and they did an audit, and they found there was a slush fund in which tens of millions of dollars were not properly accounted for, and they were given in failed loans and so on. Fast forward to where we are now, there's been a lot of infighting by this current board. A lot of issues for the terms of 5 of the directors have expired. They have not appointed anyone, so there's just a chair and a vice chair, and they continue to take decisions. And the people in the finance department, well, before I get to that, there's also no substantive CEO. They sent home the CEO who was appointed during the tenure of Mrs. Fasad-Bissessar. They do not have a corporate secretary and so on and so forth. And now there's a chair and a deputy chair, and they have been given the directions, financial directions, especially the chair, to the finance department in terms of payments. And a senior official of the finance department has written to say, listen, there's no procurement procedure here, there's no contract, there's no time, there's no binding agreement, and so on. So he has said that these are his words, these are questionable decisions. And remember, these are taxpayers' money. In fact, the ADB has just lost $14.2 million in its more recent financial year.
Repeat that again, Mr. Ali. How much money?
They lost $14.2 million in its most recent financial year. And they are very capricious with the decisions they're making. They do financial decisions in the manner in which they're giving loans and they're paying lawyers' fee, high lawyers' fee, and so on. And like I said, we come from a backdrop in which there was a lot of misspending prior to 2010 that an audit found. And now the board, tenure of the board of 5 directors have expired. They have a chair and a vice chair, so there is no quorum. They can't take decisions, and yet authorization and instructions are being given to the acting CEO. There is no substantive CEO to make big payments to people who have provided services. And the finance department saying, wait, we have no contract for these things. You can't just tell us you got an invoice for $300,000 or $500,000, whatever, and we must make payments. procurements. So it is all a disturbing state of affairs, a scandalous state of affairs. And just to say again, Mikey, that the taxpayers own this bank. This is owned by every person in Trinidad and Tobago.
And paying this price, $14.2 million in this guava season. And on top of that, cabinet ministers have paid close attention to a recent report of financial activities at the ADB, including questions about the procurement of services. Now, the question has to be, then what is the purpose of the Office of Procurement and Regulation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point, because these procurement issues ought to go through the procurement office, the National Procurement Office. And you see, and it raises the question about whether this has been flouted elsewhere, not just at the ADB. Somebody should inquire into that. So all of this is really a breakdown of institutions in the country, Mikey. I mean, this is just another indication of that. And that's one of the points I've been writing about extensively, breakdown of our institutions, you know.
Yeah.
And if I could say that, that refers a lot to, I know the current person and the current topic is Mr. Pandey, but Mr. Pandey had fought for strong institutions in the country, you know, and he tried to set Trinidad and Tobago like Singapore. And one of the strengths of the Singaporean society was the strong national institutions, which were open to scrutiny and so on. And here we've seen virtually every, and probably every public agency and institution, corporate body and so on, being subverted, undermined, and with questionable decisions.
And I mean, you've been writing about this, and again, I have to say hats off to you. And when it comes to exposing many of these things, I remember you told us that there's a monopoly as far as in the pharmaceutical enterprise here in Trinidad and Tobago. One company basically doing all the importing of medicines and so many things. Do they really grasp and have an understanding of what it is that's taking place?
I don't know if they do, and I'm glad you raised that, because that again brings me to Mr. Pandey, and I'm going to write about that, because you remember the days when he spoke about the parasitic oligarchy,
yes.
And this is what he was speaking about. And what has happened in recent times is the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. Dr. Rowley has said that's a good thing, because he believes in what is called trickle-down economics. But that hasn't worked. Mrs. Thatcher tried that, Ronald Reagan tried that, and so on. And the middle class is disappearing. A lot of people are going abroad, shutting. 6,000 small businesses didn't reopen after COVID, and there were various reasons. One, the banks were very severe on them, but apart from that, there were large businesses that remained open, including a very prominent chain of supermarkets. That if you go in there now, Mikey, you could buy from lunch to stationery, to glasses, to everything. They went into the businesses that small businesses were into. This is a conglomerate that is very close to the ruling government. So I don't know if people take note, as you rightly say, about what is happening. And Mr. Pandey fought for a more equal society. That is, there are things that he stood for, a more equal, a fairer playing field for the working class. That was one of Mr. Pandey's ambition. That, and of course, ethnic and racial unity was another of his strong hallmark. But we've seen the society has gotten wider and wider. Rich is getting richer, and the poor is getting poorer.
And the middle class is basically wiped out. I mean,
yes.
when you look at what Dr. Rowley said in his message, of course, for 2024, he says that he's pleased that his government can state that it greets the new year with a renewed sense of optimism as we strengthen our energy base, enhance the nation's infrastructure, improve the conditions for investment, and continue our attempts to improve and make the daily lives of citizens safer. Now, a lot of this rhetoric that is being said does not reflect the reality that we face on a daily basis.
Well, let us analyze that. Let me pick the low-hanging fruit first. Infrastructure, what he's trying to say is that it will pave the roads for the general election. Now, in terms of the economy, what he is saying, you see the economy has sunk so badly that when we see growth, when the IMF tells us of growth and the World Bank, they mean relative to where we were. If you had $20 and you lost $18 and now you have $2 and it went up to $3, you've seen growth. And that is where we are. Oil and gas, look what we have to do. We have to depend on the tyrant next door in terms of dragon gas, because we have made no efforts at diversifying the economy. So that's the reality with respect to that. He's talking about investments. Let me tell you, our investment portfolio is the lowest in the Caribbean. And citing my source, it is called ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, as a United Nations agency. And when I write it, it's true that the last report said that Haiti is getting more investments than we are. There's something called ease of doing business. The World Bank creates this every year. And it means that if you're going to open a business, you have to go to TNTech, you have to go to WASA, you need approvals here and there. And they list the average number of days, and Trinidad and Tobago is lower than every Caribbean country, Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, everybody else. Our investors have fled. We have had a flight of investors. Again, the facts substantiate this. Under Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar in 2014 and 15, we got an average of 1.5 billion US a year. Here we're losing them at the rate of almost $1 billion a year, right? Whether it was ArcelorMittal, which we allowed to go, and a whole range of others we could list. So we are losing investors. So when Dr. Rowley said these things, as you rightly said, they're rhetoric. You know, it's just empty rhetoric.
It has to be, because again, the middle class have been wiped out. But I want to shift gears a bit here, of course, on the late great Basdeo Pandey, and one of your writings here with his brother, Mr. Subhash Pandey, the last of the Pandeys, of course, that is still alive. He said that his brother did symbolic things to identify with common people, and it included placing cane cutter Dora Bridgemohan and religious leader Barbara Burke in the Senate. Mr. Pandey came from humble beginnings.
Extremely
humble beginnings, and yet still he never lost that connection with the average man. Today we have people who simply stay in their political ivory towers, make demands, but it seems as though it's based in the interests of themselves, their friends, their family, and of course their finances. And the question has to be, are people really grasping what is taking place in front of their very eyes?
Yeah, because the poor is getting poorer for all kinds of reasons. Again, I like to quote reports to substantiate. UNICEF, which is the United Nations agency, talks on, this is a term they use, staggering levels of child poverty. There's a lot of child poverty in the country. You see a lot of parents taking them out at street corners. It's not a nice thing to take children to beg, but it's an indication of a huge problem we have. So the poor has gotten poorer for all kinds of reasons, including the shutdown of the small businesses and so on. There's what you call the informal sector. People afraid to go out and sell doubles and hot dog and thing in the night because they're afraid criminals. So where they were doing a little hustle in the evening and doing something, they're afraid to do all of that now. The tire shop is closing earlier and so on and so forth. So all of those things have impacted the quality of life in the country. And I don't know, Mikey, if the government has a handle and understands the plight of the working class. And there's where Mr. Pandey made a real difference. In speaking with Subhash, he reminded me of the difficult circumstances, I call it grinding poverty, in which he came through. It was really, really difficult, and he kept that close to his heart, and he cared for the small man, and that must be Mr. Pandey's legacy, how much he cared for the working class and how much he wanted the races to unite, so...
If we shift a bit from the politics, what stood out to you as Pandey, the individual, the man himself?
I think he cared for his fellow man. Now, I interviewed Mr. Pandey several times. I was fortunate, and in my many years in journalism, I covered him in all areas, in labor, in government, and opposition, and so on. I think, unlike most others, he understood this post-colonial society. He knew that people were just lumped and brought here by virtue of slavery and indentureship and colonialism and so on. So there were so many classes and so many races and so on. And he strongly felt that the blacks, Africans, and Indians should unite. And he worked in the early years with George Weeks to unite people at the ground floor. Remember, Dr. Williams once said that one of his successes was keeping oil and sugar workers apart. What he meant was keeping African and Indian people apart. Mr. Pandey always felt that the strength of the country was its human resource, and he sought to unite people, and he did tangible things to do that. And he really tried to improve the lot of the working class. When you understand the state of sugar workers, once he reminded me that when he went in the sugar belt in the 70s, they were getting 32 cents a day, and they were working 3 months a year, and they were taking what the old people would call trust in the nearby shop. Right? So they were living on groceries based on loans and so on, and they were repaying that when they got paid the next year. And in the sugar belt, we must remember him for improving the workers' wages, for removing child labor, because long time they allowed children to go into the fields, and 3, for getting decent housing. So that's his legacy. Mr. Pandey really stood tall in so many ways, and he was really head and shoulders in terms of his appreciation of where we are as a people and what we were capable of.
And Mr. Ali, I agree with you 100%. He really had that level of understanding, because even if you look at the civil rights movement in the United States in the early days, there was a conflict in ideology between Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. Martin Luther King wanted to keep it in the confines of civil rights. But of course, Malcolm X said, listen, we need to take our plight to the United Nations under the heading of human rights. And there was a bit of a, difference in ideology. Here you have Mr. Pandey in the early days saying, we have to turn the labor struggle into a political struggle. So he understood.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because in the mid-70s, they formed the United Labor Front. And then he said, listen, there's only so far we will reach. Their slogan was, let those who labor hold the reins. And he said, the only way we will achieve what we want is if we get political power. So we must turn the United Labor Front into a united political front. And that is how he went headlong into politics to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. So he understood. He understood quite well. Listen, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to link with us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And I know we'll be speaking, of course, periodically throughout the year. All the best again, and keep up the good writing. And we'll be sharing it right here on The Observer.
Thank you very much, Mikey. Best wishes to you, your team, and to your many viewers and listeners.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Hey, we're going to try to reach, of course, Miss lecturer and head of UWI's Institute for Gender and Development, which is always a pleasure to have her on as well. And that was veteran journalist Mr. Ken Ali. Very, very enlightening. Let me say a special good evening to Dr. Suan Barrett. Pleasant good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening to you, and Happy New Year.
Same to you and your family. Wish you all the best, great health, financial prosperity, and of course a peace of mind for 2024.
Yes, thank you very much. Although it started off a little bit unpeaceful.
Yes, and that's exactly what I wanted the focus to be on. Unfortunately, again, it's a pleasure speaking with you, but again, when you look at the conversations that we're having, we ask ourselves, why are we finding ourselves in this situation again? What transpired, of course, earlier this week, husband taking the life of the wife and, of course, the mother-in-law. The question has to be asked, and I don't want to dive deep into it because the investigation continues, but the mere fact that there was a protection order, based on eyewitness reports, there were threats that were made publicly, intimidating tactics showing up at the home and what have you. And I need to ask the question, because some people want to know, well, if this order was in place, why was this still being done? Does the system fail our women?
I'll answer you in two ways. First of all, globally, statistically, protection orders sometimes result in escalation of violence, often actually, because it is seen as, an affront, and it triggers further violence. Does the system fail our women? Not entirely. I think there are gaps that need to be addressed in the sense of, okay, we have had a very practical system. You have a situation, you make a report, you get a protection order, and you do essentially what is a strategic response to a violent situation. But we need to then expand our scope and have a real whole systems evaluation, bring in our psychologists, bring in those who can evaluate what is the effect of a protection order. We have enough evidence to show what is the possible effect, and we've seen the effect situations like these. This is not the first time it has happened, where it escalates to the point and it ends in death, in femicide, right? And in this case, 2 members of a family are gone, children are left homeless. So I will not say that the system fails our women, because that's too generalized a statement. I would say that there are gaps, areas that we need to address in the system that we have applied and what we are not attending to, the complications of the system.
Yeah, but again, I understand where you're coming from, and I guess it has to be expanded, because immediately when these signals go up, these red flags go up, you're right. There has to be something to say, listen, we need to sit with you. We need to talk with you. It cannot be business as usual. I mean, you can't simply just report to work. We need to know what's going on in your mind, just how you feel, what could be your next state. But these things don't happen. And again, it brings us right back to this culture of ownership of a woman. You know, if I can't have you, no one can. Even if I have to take your life, I would rather see you dead than the fact that you're not sharing your life with me. We haven't crossed that stage. Even having that support system where someone would have that conversation with you and say, listen, hey, this is not funny. Infidelity is not funny. What we say locally as horn is not funny. We need to let you understand that you need to get help. But we still haven't reached there yet. Why?
You know, in 2024, we have not yet dealt with the discomfort of the romantic and the sexual. So all that you've said, you know, entitlement and ownership and possessiveness that happens within relationships, it happens, you know, by all members in a relationship, but it tends to happen quite a lot by a male partner based on how we have constructed masculinity. But guess what happens? When things go well, it's romantic, it's exciting, it's passionate, and we tell that story to ourselves. It's part of our narratives of love and fantasy. But we have to start to disrupt that. So that's one that I would say. Now, I don't know the reason for the conflict in this particular case, so I don't want to speculate too much, because we don't know, you know, what happened, why it happened. We need to find out more. But in terms of the system, which is why we're talking again, and the last time we spoke, we said we hope we don't have to talk too soon again, but it is soon. I think when we have police reports filed, we don't have the resources that, you know, provide somebody with a bodyguard and surveillance and all of that, right? We know we don't have that. But if we can have interventions for both parties to say, look, this situation is escalating in your life. What do you need? Whether it is a psychosocial support, whether it's law enforcement support, whether it's institutional support, bring those parties in so that it does not result in this situation. I think that is a definite, not a complete solution, but something that can mitigate what is prevailing and existing problem in our own country and globally. And then we need to stop telling ourselves that true romance and true love and true fantasy is about ownership. Until we start to tell a different story, then we will keep confronting this problem.
Yeah, but Dr. Barrett, these signals and these red flags don't go up automatically. Understand that. And I think that, and I keep saying, every time I speak to you, I basically say that, listen, everyone is prepared for their wedding day, but not everyone is prepared for a marriage. And those are two separate things. Understanding these are two people coming with different characteristics who are both products of different environments. And I guess it takes a while for you to see many of these signals, because I don't believe that any woman who gives all to her man and gives everything to her husband expects him one day to come home and say, listen, if I can't have you, no one can, to the point that they are going to take her life out. No one.
You know, that is so true. So remember, people don't fall in love with horrible people, okay?
No.
You fall in love with somebody who really meets your criteria, and you tell your friends, and it's something you're happy, you get married, you have children, and you think, okay, this is my best bet and I'm happy. And you know, you saw the news story where there was a photograph of them in happier times. And if we just look at the faces in that photograph, there's nothing that gives any kind of indication that this would have been the outcome. But I think what happens is, as you write, the old people used to say, see me and come live with me is two different things. And this is why people need that kind of support and kind of almost training to live with somebody who you didn't grow up with. And even then, families need training. But what I would say is, red flags emerge and sometimes we doubt if they are red flags. Or red flags do not emerge until we are comfortable and secure and attached. People don't show themselves. And so, you know, sometimes people figure there's a preventative route. It's very, very hard. Someone might know it. There was a TikTok. I cannot remember the name of the content creator, but it's so timely. It's not from Trinidad and Tobago. And these women of color from the global north making a point and said, women have an experience with men that other men do not witness. And that is something that I think we need to consider in our own space, in the sense that you might be hanging out with a couple and you see the guy and he looks great and it's wonderful. But in the private, after attachment has taken place, you see a personality that many do not see. So I wish I could tell you that there was a resolve or resolution, but I'm at my wit's end because I don't know what the solution is beyond a complete overhaul of how we construct our lives and relationships.
Yeah, I think there has to be something that is going to trigger some level of understanding, and I think we need to do that, and it must be just raw dialogue. It should not be filtered or diluted, and men have to understand that, listen, at any point in time that you feel that you're going to abuse or hurt a woman, please just take her back to her father. Take her back to her family. Don't do that. Take her back.
Well, you know, it's very simple in the sense of, I've been to sessions where I ask people, in your relationship, are you willing to offer your partner absolute freedom? The answer that I usually get is no. But the truth is, that is the place you want to come from. I have the privilege of this person's company, time, life journey, and so forth. I do not own or nor am I entitled to them. And so if you look at this person as part of your life, as a privilege, it's a gift. It's not an entitlement. Also, if this person hurts you, harms you, breaks your heart, whatever it may be, then walk away. You do not own them. And that's something we need to reinforce. Even in a campaign, even the media, just walk away. I think it would reach far. It's a simple message. It could be a song. It could even be a calypso or soca. It's carnival time coming. Just walk away. Just walk away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out this evening. Again, all the best of luck to you and your entire team for 2024. And hopefully when we talk again, it's not the same backdrop of something that has gone wrong or someone's life has been lost.
I remain optimistic. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Hey, let me say a pleasant good evening to Donna Gocking, Lutchman James, Grace Caesar, Marilyn Sicharan, wonderful people, Nita Ramlal, Raul Prasad, Stephen Bachu, Budram John, Ann Brown, Peter Dindial out there in Fort Lauderdale. Pleasant good evening to you. Yolanda Carter, I believe is Yolanda Sedeno. Valerie, hardworking woman. Thank you so much for your support, Valerie. Azina Smith, Matilda Rhodes, Sharon Lee, Zabrian Ghani, Stone John, Alan Hercules, Biznat Prasad, Patricia Hutchinson, Vicky Thomas, Kurt Joseph, and of course Bix. Bix, I saw your comment earlier on, and you're right. There is no middle class anymore. It has definitely been wiped out. And just to remind you that vitamin XLD3 provides the most natural and absorbable form of vitamin D, which promotes whole body health, which is crucial for circular health, especially regarding the cells for the immune system. So please, every cell in your body needs vitamin D3 to function properly. Pick up your bottle of vitamin XLD3 today. Master Control, go right ahead and let's see what happens. We'll run those ads.
Limiting Chronic inflammation is important for so many conditions that occur.
I had a lot of pain 4 years ago.
I used to have pain in my knees and my hip.
Taking it for arthritis.
Mikee XL saved my life.
Then I started to realize, but hey, I could use my hands, I don't have any pain.
All in all, I am pleased to say that the Omega XL has worked.
Oh gosh, this place hot and the AC in this car not working. It's like a driving a damn sauna.
Check Ryan Air. Ryan Air is ranked among the best in TNT for auto air conditioning service. They specialize in repairing and servicing all makes and models of vehicles and heavy equipment. They also stock a wide range of parts. Give them a call at 640-5828 or visit them at number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua, or email ryanairac@gmail.com. For prompt and efficient service, look no further than Ryan Air.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thank you so much for spending your time with us here this evening. We'll be back, God willing, next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. right here on Guile TV. Amplia, of course, Tigo, Facebook, YouTube. If you want to get the clips of the interviews, you can simply WhatsApp me at 494